So now the AI of various kinds is insinuating itself into every nook and cranny of our modern Western life. What can you actually usefully do with it on an everyday basis? That is, assuming you do succumb and want to stick your toes in the water, so to speak. Well, I can tell you what I do with it. Well, some of these are daily use cases, some not, but I have and do use various AI platforms pretty regularly. Honestly, most of it is for fairly mundane tasks that can be done without AI, but are more easily completed with its help. Getting information is maybe the one most people think of, and there are many tools you can use for free and sometimes even without signing up or signing into anything. The two I personally use most are Perplexity and, perhaps unexpectedly, Grok. Both are available as apps on Android and iOS. As of the beginning of 2025, you do not need an X account to use Grok, which was a previous requirement. The thing that I like most is the ability to ask a poorly worded question or, alternatively, a rather convoluted question and still get a meaningful answer. Typically not something that works well in a normal search engine. Personally, I often find myself knowing what I want, but struggling to word my request to get it. Hence, Perplexity and Grok. A recent example of this is me looking for a cheap funeral service in my area. I know, but when you're approaching 70, you start thinking about stuff like that. Anyway, my request to Grok was something along the lines of, I need a sample letter I can send out to local funeral parlors regarding direct cremation services, costs, requirements, can I book ahead and lock in prices, etc. Direct cremation is a bargain basement cremation/funeral service, as you may have guessed. That request produced a very comprehensive form letter where I can just fill in the blanks. This actually saved me quite a bit of time and aggravation. Improving old photos is something I've been tinkering with on and off for years, since I have a lot of these that were scanned at some point and are now in digital form. You can do color correction and some other improvements with traditional photo editing tools, but to actually improve the look by upscaling or quote-unquote recovering detail, you need to look to AI. The recovering detail part is a bit of a misnomer. We are not yet at the stage where you can just ask the computer to enhance an image, like in the movies, but honestly, it's getting close. The one thing that frustrates me constantly is that upscaling with faces tends to change the faces, especially if the faces are small in the frame to begin with, as with a group photo. And those are the ones you often want to preserve, the ones with a bunch of friends or relatives together. So referring back to use case 1, asking goofy questions, I asked Grok, what is the best upscaler on huggingface.co for an old photo with several people in it? Parentheses, good face integrity. It came back with a detailed answer, and the first pick was this. Now, I should say I've been fiddling around with a few different upscalers already, and while they worked in the general case, faces and group photos were always disappointing. However, the one that Grok came up with actually did what I wanted, introducing a mild upscale 2 times, while retaining faces correctly, as seen here. All right, I have some sample photos here just to give you an idea what we're talking about. I have a picture of myself and some other guys at my wedding, and a picture of me at my job in 1990. So let's open this up first here. So this is a picture that was scanned, and you can see it's pretty blurry. Now, typically, when you update it, when you upscale it, it's going to look like this. You can possibly see some of the faces are looking a little janky. So when I used the upscaler that Grok recommended, it became this, which you may be able to see is a lot better. Let me go back to the original one here. That's the original that I had. And this is the upscaled one with the good upscaler. So you can see it did retain the faces. There's not much artifacting at all. Just flick back and forth here between them. That's pretty good. The other one is from my wedding. That's me over here, the handsome one with the glasses. And you could tell it's a Scottish wedding, can't you? So I'll flip between this and the one that I upscaled using the upscaler that Grok recommended. So here's the upscaled one. Here's the original one. Upscaled. Original. That is pretty darn good. That's about as good as I would expect it to get. So it's handled, you still got a little bit of smearing with some stuff, but the faces are the important part for me, and those came out well. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Again, this saved me time and a fair bit of head scratching, and kind of leads into the next item. AI image and video generation is another pretty common use case, especially images. However, I'm not making images of the anime cat girls. No, my use case is more mundane. As you may have seen, my YouTube videos are mostly faceless in that I almost never appear in them. So that requires images or videos to reinforce the talking points or explain some part in the presentation. While I typically use free sites like Pexels or Pixabay for copyright-free resources, I've also started using Kling at times. And I should make it clear that Kling is the only AI tool I actually pay for, since doing so gives access to watermark-free videos. It's less than $10 a month for the plan I use, but being tight with a buck and now retired, I had to give even that some thought before committing. I'm not cranking out a lot of AI-generated videos, so it works fine for my needs. The thing I probably used it for most so far were the opening titles for this YouTube channel, where various characters pass in front of a brick wall with Sansi face graffiti. I'm still not sure where the idea came from. I have a nagging feeling I probably saw it somewhere and copied it, but I genuinely can't remember. Anyway, I generated a few walls as images, picked one, and then used that to make short opening title animations. By the way, the scruffy dog in one of those titles coincidentally looks a lot like our dog who passed earlier this year. And every time I see it, I feel some kind of way. So those are the few AI tools I actually use with any kind of frequency. I also use a couple of different AI audio cleanup tools, and I sometimes use Claude to grammar check or rephrase my YouTube video scripts or blog posts. Lastly, I have fussed around a wee bit with so-called vibe coding, but that seems to test my patience, so it's not something I do a lot. For good or ill, AI is starting to be more inexpensive and accessible to the general public, as well as tech types and other professionals. Anyone else out there turn to the dark side and actually use AI tools with regularity? If so, are they actually helpful to you, or do you find yourself just going down rabbit holes with them? Let us know in the comments. Take care. So that's another video in the can. If you found this informative or interesting, please consider liking and subscribing down below. And remember, be excellent to each other.